when you're doing something you've never done before, it's very important to surround yourself with experts. And there will be nobody that is expert of all the fields that this big change and big transformation requires. But the collection of expertise, a collection of knowledge, collection of talent that I surround myself with makes it possible.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the World Class Leader Show. And today I'm so excited to have with me a fellow Italian, but that lives abroad, has had a very international experience, as I had mine. So it's Stefano Volpetti. Stefano is the president of Smoke-Free Inhalable Products and chief consumer officer of Philip Morris International. Stefano has been a prominent voice of consumer centrality, leading the company's shift from B2B model to a consumer-first model that better enables PMI's transformation to a smoke-free company and accelerates the delivery of smoke-free future. And it definitely will tell us more about this because that's fascinating. Well, Stefano joined PMI in 2019 as a chief consumer officer, as we said, and since has been at the forefront of redefining the tobacco nicotine space through the promotion of science innovation, pioneering the heated tobacco segment. Under his leadership, more than 19.7 million adults in approximately 82 markets worldwide have switched to PMI's smoke-free products and stopped smoking. First introduced just 9 years ago, PMI's flagship smoke-free brand, IQOS, is now the #1 nicotine brand globally, and smoke-free products now represent almost 36.2% of the entire net revenues of PMIs. Besides that, Stefano is a global leader in consumer-centric marketing programs and really involved in large-scale business transformation, digital acceleration, disruptive innovation. He's a marketer with broad experience commercial roles, having obtained a winning track record with consumers both developed and emerging markets. And prior to MI, Stefano spent 22 years at Procter & Gamble, had several prominent roles, including leading one of the P&G's multifunctional global business units. And Stefano finally has also a degree in business administration from the Luis Guido Carli University in Rome. So, Stefano, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Good morning, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be together.
Awesome. So, Stefano, let me start with I'm curious about your career. I mean, it's such an amazing career. And you started in one that's been considered one of the best teaching schools in business, like Procter & Gamble. So how much Procter & Gamble has influenced your career, has shaped your success, or you think that has been just you? So I'm curious to hear that.
So I really believe that the experience in P&G was transformational, and literally transformational, because I entered P&G when I was 24 years old.
Right.
And 22 years after, I exited as the global VP for a business unit that is present in 140 countries around the world. So the Stefano of day one and the Stefano of year 22 were very, very different. At the school of P&G, that is a school of leadership, a school of life, before being a school of marketing, has been fundamental. I would have not even imagined to get all the way to where I got, and I owe everything to those years I spent at P&G that were in an investment on myself,
Yes.
really unprecedented and not even thinkable.
Yeah, I bet. And one of my best mentors has been one of the leaders in the past in P&G. So the reason why I asked this question, because I'm so much close to P&G and how shape leaders. So that's why I was curious the question. And now, given where you are now in other global organizations like Philip Morris International, what do you think Philip Morris International briefly has added to your career, your learning from what you learned before in P&G? What is one thing that you definitely learn in PMIs?
I think the biggest learning in PMI is courage, and is really an element of leading the business and leading the organization with courage. When you are in the middle of a transformation that is not only a company transformation, but it's an entire industry transformation.
Yeah.
By definition, nobody has ever done it before.
Mm.
So there is not a path to follow or a best practice to follow. So the element of courage plays an enormous role. Courage in the decision making, courage in the investments, courage in the direction you take, courage on which people you invest on, courage of how much freedom you give to people. So all aspects of the business and the organization are really a manifestation of courage, and this is the most apparent trait of this company, and the one thing that I learned the most in these almost 5 years at PMI.
Which is interesting, right? Because our from an external perspective, either you are or we are a smoker or not, but I think one of the major, I would say, bias about Philip Morris, like many others global tobacco brands, is actually being a little bit more traditional, more conservative, because it's an industry that for many, many, many years is really either didn't want to change or there was no need to change. And now, as you say, you are going through a storm. It's not just, I suppose, a transformation based on what we are. So it's interesting how the courage became a value for I think, again, I might be completely wrong. My perception of large companies, they always really struggle to change so drastically. But it sounds like that is the path that you are taking, Philip Morris taking. And that leads me to the next question. So you are essentially the number one person for the smoke-free products in Philip Morris. You're really driving the new products, driving this revolution that Philip Morris sounds like is taking over. So what is your role? So what is your vision? What's your scope? So at least we all know what's important to you.
So, as president of the business unit that leads the smoke-free products, I'm not alone, and I'm not alone because the entire company is behind this category. The mission of the company is to phase out cigarettes over time.
Mm.
And we start from our ethos, and our ethos is if you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. If you don't quit, change. And by change, we mean change to smoke-free products that are scientifically substantiated to be better alternatives for smokers.
Right.
So the mission of the company is to really drive a smoke-free future and over time phase out cigarettes. The company is very serious about it, to the point that this journey started in 2014, 2015, and 8, 9 years after, here we are with 36% of our global revenues in smoke-free products, and an enormous investment and focus from the company to realize this vision of a smoke-free future. My role is the one of leading this business unit. The best way to lead the business unit is to represent the consumers.
Yes.
In my case, the smokers, that they need to make a difficult transition from a cigarette to a smoke-free product. That is not just a product transition, but it is a behavior transition, and therefore it entails much more components than just the product.
Yeah, look, the numbers are staggering, by the way, because you said, and we said as well in introduction, so 36% of the total revenues coming from smoke-free products. So it sounds like the transformation is happening, but also is making an impact, in the global population. So I have a couple of questions. So I would like to start with the consumers first. So how did you see the consumer changing their behaviors? Because I was a smoker when I was younger, and as many of us maybe struggle to stop, to quit, but also to change completely their behaviors. Then we have seen the incredible rise of smoke-free products. But what has been your experience from a consumer standpoint in terms of the transition and how they related with Philip Morris as a brand?
Yeah, it's a very important question because as we departed on this journey on a smoke-free, probably the biggest revolution has been the one to put the consumer at the center.
Mm.
And And when we put the consumer at the center, we understand that this company over time needed to become, and it became, a data company, a science company, a technology company, and a behavior change company, because this is what is required to really help smokers transition to smoke free alternatives. Our position is clear. If you are a smoker, the best option is to quit. But all of us know well that not many people want to quit. Hence, we provide smoke free alternatives that are significantly better for the
Mm.
smoker. This is an important behavior change, and it's a behavior change because cigarette is just an analog experience, one of the
Right.
last few analog
Right.
experience of this planet. And when you move to a smoke-free alternative, there is a piece of consumer electronic. There is a completely different journey from a consumer standpoint. Hence, it becomes a little bit more complicated and sophisticated than just an analog experience. Um, when you are trying to change a habit, and whether that habit is diet, sport, or using a different type of car, when you are trying to change a habit, there are rational components, there are social components, there are
Mm.
emotional components.
Yes.
But there is one element that is the most important of all, that is the credibility of the brand.
Mm.
Because if you are in front of a brand that is credible, you will be able to follow the steps needed to change that habit.
Mm.
But without credibility, nobody will follow. Hence, it is so important for us to make sure that we created credibility into the proposition of ICOS. And we built the brand of ICOS as a brand that has to be a brand of science, a brand of technology, but at the same time, a very credible brand that is able to accompany smokers into the journey of change to smoke-free alternatives. The, to the point that the most frequent verbatim from ICOS users is ICOS changed my life. And
Mm.
changed my life is a much bigger statement than I love the brand, I like the brand, I like the product.
Oh,
Changed my
definitely.
life has a
Yes.
much deeper meaning. And this is what we are after, because we know that if we do a good job at helping cigarette smokers transition to smoke free alternatives, we are literally changing the trajectory of public health globally.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I'm curious. Look, we know by all experience that changing behaviors is could be difficult. I mean, I have a different point of view than traditional views out there in terms of it takes time to change behaviors. It does, but sometimes when people change completely their perspective about something, they can actually start to make a new habits quite straight away, by the way. So it's not necessarily this storytelling that we hear that it takes months, etc. So how ICOS, has actually contributed to the behavioral change? Because look, at some point you might think, from someone like me that is a little bit on the side of this, because I'm not using products at the moment, but I might feel, well, it's great you have a new product through communication media. Definitely, you're trying to shape different behaviors to use these products instead of traditional cigarettes, but still, it's a personal journey for people. So how ICOS is really supporting that sort of change? Is there something different that you do, in other words, than just communication?
Uh, for sure, we do something different in communication, because in most of the places we cannot communicate.
Yes,
So we
yes,
are in a
yes.
regulated
Good
industry.
point.
We actually use a model what we could call the 4 A's model, and the
Okay,
4 A's are awareness, acceptability, availability, and affordability.
nice.
And this is a model that is built to help smokers transition through the journey of moving to a smoke-free alternative. The awareness is all about being clear about the benefit of the smoke-free alternatives.
Mm,
When you want to change your habit, whether it is a diet, sport, or using a different car, you need to know what is the benefit of that change.
yes.
And in this category, that is of paramount importance because there is a lot of stigma on tobacco, and the smoke-free alternatives, especially heated tobacco, are pretty new phenomena around the world. Hence, being able to communicate that benefit is extremely important because
Yes.
if you don't see the benefit, you individual consumer, you individual smoker, you will not make that change.
Yes.
So that is the first important step. The acceptability of the proposition is very important because in the end, all the things that we ourselves do in life for pleasure, we do it because there is a certain level of acceptability of that pleasure. Okay.
Yes.
And I speak as a non-smoker, but of course I have other things that I do in life that have high level of acceptability. So for us, it was important to design a product that had high level of acceptability among smokers, and at the same time, it was a smoke-free alternative, i.e., it eliminated the combustion from the use of tobacco, and by eliminating combustion, it eliminates 95% of the impactful substances. So this notion of acceptability is very important because it's easy to say you need to move to a smoke-free alternative. Designing a smoke-free alternative in a way that is still palatable for a
Yeah.
smoker is a
Yes.
very, very, very difficult exercise.
I bet.
To the point that when you put the amount of investments in science, technology, and commercialization that ICOS has put down, Philip Morris has put down to invest on ICOS, this is up to $10 billion since we
Wow.
started this journey. So it's a very significant development of this proposition. The availability is all about once you have a product that has clear benefits and a product that is palatable, how do you make sure that people have access to it? And the availability in this category is important because the smokers need to have access to it, but we don't want non-smokers and we don't want underage to be exposed to these products because this is clearly a regulated category and we have clear code of conduct on our side. So the availability is not like in FMCG because it's much more complicated and much more sophisticated to make sure we work within the remit of what we give ourselves as code of conduct and what the regulators establish as a framework of commercial conduct. The affordability is also an important aspect. Our principle is to make sure that we don't make price a barrier to the behavior change. So this is, in a nutshell, our model. That is a model that is by now well proven in about 82 countries around the world. So
Yeah, I
we have
can
had
see that.
quite some learnings and mastery of it. We didn't get it right necessarily the first time. We didn't get it right always. But you know, when you're trying to make a behavior change in a totally new category, learning on the way is part of a clear part of the success definition.
Yeah. And look, I think what I like about these four levers that you mentioned, the four A's, is they are really tackling into the personal identity. And when we know by experience, then when people are aware that they are not okay with a personal identity, it could be like, I want to be healthy, I don't want to smoke anymore, etc. And then of course the habits and the addiction doesn't help to change the identity. But once really people start to consider a potential different identity, that's the time when they're happy or they're able to actually embrace new changes. And I think the 4As really are able to tackle that, comparing to other traditional exercise that don't necessarily change, behavior, as you said. That's brilliant. Okay, good. If we shifting a little bit the conversation into the company, into Philip Morris International. So how has been look, it sounds incredibly successful, but what is happening behind the scenes? So in other words, what has been the burden, the challenges, the difficulties for a global brand like Philip Morris International to step into a completely new world, to change completely the proposition? So look, normally, and that's another bias that we have, the large organization in the world are normally the ones that really struggle most to change so radically just because they're large, they're complex, they are structured, etc. So how has been the journey internally, in your opinion?
But in Philip Morris International, we have 70,000 employees. But even in a company with 70,000 employees, big changes are initiated by few people. Probably you can count them on the fingers of one hand.
Right.
And once those few people set the direction, by declaring that direction internally and externally, that's the moment in which the change really starts. Because when the company went public in 2014, that we would be having a new goal for a smoke-free future, that we will reach a certain percent of revenue in smoke-free products by a certain date. That was a message internally and a message externally. And those few people were the originators of this big change. And then, of course, when you put organizational focus, investment, KPIs, all heading in that direction, then the change starts to happen. Of course, this is the internal part, but we should also consider the external part. There is only one certainty in this journey to a smoke-free future. We will not be able to do it alone. And we will not be able to do it alone because around the world there are 1.1 billion smokers. And if we want to deliver a smoke-free future, this is not just about PMI. This is about an entire industry. This is about regulators. This is about partners. This is about civil society. So in general, this massive change in such an important category that can really change the trajectory of public health globally, it requires much more than just one company. So this is an important one as we get into this journey, and it probably is one of the biggest learnings of the first 8-9 years in which we have been in since 2014.
So is it right? I'm not sure, but is it right that the vision for PMIs for, I don't know, 2030, 2040, I don't know whether it's something like that, is going fully smoke-free as an organization? That's the vision.
So our stated goal is that by 2030 we will be 2/3 smoke-free. So 2/3 of our net revenue will be smoke-free.
Okay.
This is what we declared in the investor day that was at the end of September.
Okay.
Where have we vis-a-vis the goal? Today we are at 36%. So we are a bit more than 1/3. But what gives us confidence to go in that direction is that we have about 20 countries around the world where already today we have more than 50% of the revenues in smoke-free. Okay. And our best country already today has more than 75% of the revenues in smoke-free. So we know that we have a path all the way to 75%, and we will be putting everything behind this mission: talent, freedom to operate, investments, courage, and partnering with the external world for us to be able to deliver by 2030 2/3 of our turnover to be smoke-free products. But more importantly, when we start to get to 2030 and beyond, we'll start to have the first countries without cigarettes. And so first countries phasing out cigarettes. This is a doable mission, but as I said before, this is not just one company. This is a full movement on an entire industry supported by regulators and civil society.
Yeah, totally. Well, it sounds like you are on the right path and the progress that you're making are really going to that direction. So what is missing for you in terms of how can I get there? So if you look at, I'm less interested about, of course, the strategy set, but it's more from a leadership standpoint, from you, your team, your organization. What you think is something else that you need to do, you need to focus on in terms of challenges to solve in order to get at least to that 2/3 that you mentioned?
But the one thing that at the same time motivates all of us here and at the same time is a difficult one every day, is that the faster do we get there, the bigger the positive impact on public health globally it is.
Right.
I.e., that on this category, taking a neutral position, i.e., not supporting the smoke-free alternatives, but just taking a neutral position, means basically maintaining the status quo. And the status quo is that more and more smokers will be continuing to use traditional cigarettes.
Because you are tolerating both behaviors at the end of the day, right?
And the public health impact and the human health
Mm.
impact of that neutral position is very big. So for us, what motivates us is that the faster we get there, the better the impact on public health globally is. At the same time, that is an element of insatisfaction almost in the day-to-day work, because getting there faster, of course, it depends on us, but also it depends on many other factors and many other counterparts we work with around the world. This is a company full of courage. This is a company with an incredible determination to get to a smoke-free future. Uh, we are making progress. We would like to make faster progress, and this faster
Yeah.
progress is probably the one thing that all of us here would like to see happening as fast as possible.
So yeah, so essentially is keeping the sense of urgency of the importance of going fast, at the same time having, is it fair, the entire organization ready to get to the speed that you want? So it's so when you say fast is need, you need to make things or move things faster, is because there is an element of potential the entire organization need to go faster. So it's all about the impact externally. So in other words, is an internal focus the element of speed, or is an external, is both?
It has a
Both.
duality. It
Yeah.
has a duality of meaning. Let me take first the internal one, and then we take the external one. Internally, we know that to convert legal age smokers of cigarettes to smoke-free alternatives requires more than one product, requires a portfolio,
Okay.
different technologies, and the different levels of price points.
Right.
As you work on more technologies, more categories, more price points, the complexity of the business becomes
Mm.
pretty
Mm.
important. If you multiply that by the number of countries we operate in and the number of users of our smoke-free alternatives, so today 27 million, and you can imagine how many to get to two-thirds of the company revenue being smoke-free. There is a phenomenal level of complexity that comes in operating in this totally new environment. So going fast and managing that complexity is the internal challenge. The external challenge of going fast is more about having more and more regulators around the world recognizing the role of smoke-free alternatives as
Mm.
a way to improve public health, and recognizing the role of what we call tobacco harm reduction, that is an harm reduction strategy similar to other categories that have an harm reduction strategy. And that translates in those 4 A's that I mentioned before to be managed in a way that the regulators really recognize the role of smoke-free alternatives. And therefore, the way we work on awareness, on acceptability, on availability and affordability becomes a virtuous cycle for us to be able to drive the conversion to smoke-free alternatives for those legal age smokers that otherwise would continue to smoke traditional cigarettes.
Makes
So there
sense.
is this duality of challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You need both, right? You need both in order to get to the level that you want. Okay, great. So um what is, so if we look at your personal leadership now, so we spoke a lot about vision, future, strategies, and challenges from from a growth standpoint, but from a personal level, most of the guests that they come on a show, they share their personal journey as a leader in achieving or fulfilling that future that you just declared. So what people they need to know about you and the challenge that you are at the moment facing in terms of to drive that element of urgency and fast. So, what is in your leadership right now? So what is keep you awake? What is, what the style that you need to drive that sense of urgency? So how can you move people with you? So tell us a little bit more about your approach.
So, since this is a journey that nobody has ever done before in this industry,
Yeah,
when you
true,
do
true.
something you've never done before, you're not an expert, clearly. So I start from there that I'm leading a transformation that nobody has ever done
Yeah,
before.
yes,
I'm very lucky to lead this transformation together with 70,000 employees at Philip Morris International. But the matter of the fact is, I've never done it before because nobody has ever done it before.
yes, yes.
So when you are doing something that you have never done before, there are a few elements to keep in mind. First, there is a level of excitement of doing something you've never done before. No? And
Yes.
that level of excitement, if you put it together with the purpose of this vision, because driving smoke-free alternatives is probably one of the biggest public health positive impact globally, this means excitement for something never done before, and at the same time, excitement for something that has full purpose. Uh, this is very good. So I feel very lucky to have this job. When you're doing something you've never done before, it's very important to surround yourself with
Mm,
experts. And there will be nobody that is expert of all the fields that this big change and big transformation requires, but the collection of expertise, a collection of knowledge, collection of talent that I surround myself with makes it possible. And so, first statement is excitement. The second statement is this is a teamwork, and a teamwork of people with experience, talent from different fields.
mm,
Um, and the third one is being humble about learning from mistakes, because when you are trying to do something you've never done before, the probability that you will do some mistakes is very high. And actually, if you are not making any mistake, it means you're playing very safe and your transformation will advance very slow. So being able to learn from mistakes is important. It requires a certain level of being humble, but at the same time requires a very thorough and analytic approach, because you need to detect those mistakes, analyze them, make sure you don't repeat them, and extract maximum values from missteps you might be doing along the course of the transformation. So, in the combination of excitement for the journey and the purpose of it, the teamwork of experiences and talent, and being able to manage and live well with the learnings from the mistakes, I would say these are the critical ingredients to get there. Courage is an overall arching aspect of it, as I was saying at the very beginning, because this is clearly needed on this mission, and it's probably one of the things that makes it the most attractive together with the purpose.
yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And I like how you describe, the three major focus for getting the results that you're looking for. Is there anything else that people don't know about you, uh, behind the scene? People see you most likely in the organization as the president, the chief consumer officer, driving such a massive change. I mean, arguably, you are one of the most important person, definitely in Philip Morris, because you are moving the organization to the vision really they are designing for the future. So but what really people don't know about you that it's worth knowing? I'm not, by the way, I'm not looking for personal like hobbies, more like you as a person, you as a character, you as a personality.
And the uh, many times the when you look at your inner characteristics,
Mm-hmm.
many times this goes back to your roots. and I have a big advantage. And my big advantage is that I came from very humble backgrounds.
Right.
Uh, my parents didn't study beyond the primary and elementary school. I was the first one to go to middle school, high school, and imagine university was already the biggest achievement ever.
Hmm.
And frankly speaking, the fact that I overachieved my dreams probably 10 or 15 years ago gives me an enormous freedom, an enormous lightness on my shoulders.
Nice.
The higher you go, the more heavy weight you feel on your shoulders.
Of
But the
course.
higher I go, the more lightness I feel on my shoulders because I know that I have already overachieved my best life dreams. So I do my job with one mission. That the mission is if I do well for the consumers, and in this case, the smokers, I know I'm doing the right thing. And usually, when you do the right thing for the consumers, you also have your business heading in the right direction. And when you do missteps and mistakes, you learn from it and you keep going. So this lightness that comes from the fact of having a simple background and having overachieved my best dreams many, many years ago, and working with the purpose of helping consumers, in this case, smokers, to get to better alternatives. This is a massive simplifier because you don't feel pressure. You just feel the pressure of doing the right thing, and that's an easy pressure to feel.
Well, by the way, what you just shared is massive. So when people, if people are able to have that sense of lightness, as you say, definitely the pressure doesn't hit them the same way that, that can happen to other people. And you said quite right. So in when you're at top organizations, it's not only large organizations, but generally speaking, when you're in a top organization, the feeling of pressure is definitely higher and higher and higher. Although it's a privilege, because I always say it's a privilege being in that position and shaping the world. So I think we should always recognize that. But still, personally, it might be considered or perceived as a pressure. So I really love the way how you approach this because I think it's gonna make your job and your life way, way easier than many other people out there. They're definitely more stressed or they feel more the burden of the responsibility they have. Brilliant. Stefano, all the last for you, just three questions really fire chat. So very quick for quick question for a quick answer. So is there one thing that you would like probably to say has been across all the entire career the biggest learning in your life? One thing that comes to mind.
The biggest learning is by far to choose the people you work for
Okay.
instead of choosing which business you work for or
Mm,
which economic proposition you work for. When you choose the people, uh, you know you're gonna get trust. You know you're gonna get freedom to operate. So choosing the right people is the most important decision to take, and this is not obvious because most of the
yeah.
time people refer to jobs as which industry, which category, which company, which level, which compensation. But this is nothing more important than trust from the people you work with. Trust is a massive simplifier. You never, if you have trust, you don't have to double guess what's gonna be ahead of you, and it's a massive simplification.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I totally agree with you. So on the other hand, is there anything that you would have done differently in your career, on the inside?
Yeah, for
Many
sure.
things.
for, for sure. I mean, um, I I learned what I said before. I learned that the people choice is the most important one through mistakes.
Right,
Because
right,
a couple of
right.
times I've chosen businesses because they were looking interesting.
Right.
They were making me very proud, but I forgot the human element of the people you work with. So I've done a
Right.
couple of mistakes from a career standpoint that I paid with stress, I paid with pressure, and I paid with not being happy. And those mistakes are all related to choosing which people to work for. instead of looking at which business or which type of role you get. So the correlation to unhappy times in career over 26, 27 years and people is 100%. The correlation between careers happiness and the results is, or which job you do, is less straightforward. With people is 100% straightforward.
Yeah. Great, perfect. So last question. So what is your approach to learning? So how much learning is important for you? And if it's important, so what is your best source of learning? Is he reading? Is doing, I don't know, it's because many people have a very different approach. So if he's reading, then is there any book that made the difference? If he's reading.
My approach to learning is human-centric. By talking to people,
Good.
people that are in the company, mentors outside the company, mentees inside and outside the company. But just by talking to people and spending quality time with people, there is an enormous amount of learning coming, both from those conversations, but also from the reflections that come out of those conversations. So my biggest source of learning is exactly that, having interactions with people at different levels. And I do a lot of it inside the company, outside the company. And this is for me the biggest source of learning.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I'm glad actually to hear that. So leaders, they still having conversation, they put conversations at the top of their agenda for learning, as not only for leading. So great. So that was an amazing conversation. So Stefano, where people should go if they want to know more about, I mean, you, your product, what's your journey?
But so first of all, Andrea, thank you for the conversation. To know more about the company, for sure, PMI.com is the right
Yeah.
place. You will find a lot of information about our mission, our smoke-free alternatives, and the science and technology. The science and technology behind it. PMI science is a very important part of what we do. To know more about me, I don't know, call me.
Well, we'll put your link on LinkedIn profile on the show notes. So you're active, you're posting. So I think it's a good way for people to follow your journey and stay connected with you. Well, Stefano, again, thank you so much for your time with me. It's been an awesome conversation. I'm glad to hear people that are making impact on the world. So that's really close to my vision. So I'm really glad that you joined me today.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It was a great pleasure.